Well, this person didn't have to spend that $5 to $6 on seed, but this person over here is going to grow 5 to 10 times more. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope everybody out there is having a fantastic day. It is Tuesday, January 10th here in South Georgia, and everybody here is in a great mood because the dogs took care of business last night, sending them little froggies back to their lily pads. So in today's video, we need to harvest some cabbage here behind me. We're going to talk a little bit about the 3 different varieties we grew this fall, kind of what we liked or maybe what we didn't like about each of those 3 varieties there. And then I want to have a little discussion about something I was thinking about when I was ordering a bunch of my warm season seeds online the other day. Now, before we harvest some cabbage, let me tell you a little story about my dogs eating cabbage and then my little cabbage princess, baby Essie. Now, let me preface this by stealing a quote from Michael Scott. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. So before the new year rolled around, we had baby Essie on Friday, December 30th. Thankfully, they let us go home a day later on Saturday, December 31st, and that night was the semifinal of the college football playoff when the Dogs played the Ohio State Buckeyes. So on December 31st, we got home about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. Brooklyn was tired of eating hospital food. I was tired of eating fast food or eating out while we were at the hospital or around the hospital. So we said, when we get home, we're going to cook some homegrown groceries tonight. So we took a head of cabbage, sauteed it, added some sausage to it, had cabbage and sausage for supper. So I ate a big bowl of cabbage and sausage there, started watching the Dogs and the Buckeyes, and my dogs just weren't doing good. Wasn't playing up to their full potential. And I was trying to cheer them on, but nothing was really working. So right around the end of the 3rd quarter, start of the 4th quarter, Brooklyn came in there and said, I need to get some sleep. Can you hold the baby for a little while? So I grabbed baby Essie, and as soon as I started holding baby Essie, the Dogs just turned things around. And next thing you know, won the game, going to the championship. So like I said earlier, I'm not superstitious, I'm just a little stitious. So I was thinking, well, had to be something to do with holding baby Essie, because as soon as I picked her up, they turned things around. And it also probably had something to do with that cabbage and sausage I ate earlier. So last night before the championship game against TCU, we made a big batch of cabbage and sausage. I had a big bowl of that before the game. And this time I didn't wait until the 3rd or 4th quarter to grab little Miss Essie. I was holding her during the pregame and during the 1st quarter there, and what do you know, Dogs put it on them. So in addition to being nutritious and tasty, eating lots of cabbage has worked out well for us lately, and today we're going to harvest most of the rest of the cabbage we have out here in this in-ground garden plot. So let's start out here on this row with this megaton variety. Now this variety supposedly can make a cabbage head anywhere from 15 to 20 pounds if you feed it well. And that's what we were trying to do, but the Arctic blast had other ideas. And so now we just kind of got normal sized cabbage. We've already been harvesting and eating some of this, but today I want to go ahead and get the rest of it. Now I think, had we not had the Arctic blast, this stuff probably would have kept growing and got a little bit bigger. Probably could have got, you know, maybe some heads that are a little over 10 pounds. And now we just got kind of normal or a little bit smaller than normal heads of cabbage. They're pretty, they feel good, they taste good, just not as big as we thought we were going to be growing. But that is all right. This one here looks like it might grow a little bit more, but I'm going to go ahead and get it out of here. We'll give some of these leaves to the chickens after a while. I just like to go ahead and kind of field dress them out here. So we usually, when we eat a mess of cabbage, we'll eat at least 2 heads like that, or kind of 1.5 big heads, but that's probably one meal right there for us. Alright, so I harvested all those megaton heads, and let me show you something really interesting that I'm noticing here. Now yesterday when I came out here and harvested a couple heads for supper, I noticed one of the heads I harvested felt kind of real spongy, just didn't feel right, so I gave that one to the chickens. But I didn't kind of look at the bottom of it. Harvesting some of these, look at that one right there. The rear end of that one right there is completely rotted out. Now I don't know if this is a variety thing or it has to do with the Arctic blast, but I don't know that I've ever seen that on any cabbage that I've grown. Some of these heads right here look okay. That one looks fine, but this one right here, the bottom of it is really mushy right there. I don't know if we should eat that or not. And this one here starting to develop a little bit of hole in it as well. So I think I'm gonna save these that look pretty good. Just don't know about that right there. The leaves look good, but that mushy stuff in the middle looks pretty bad, and it's got kind of a smell to it. Probably should give that to the chickens. Now for this Bravo variety, we only got a few heads of these left. We've been eating more of these than we have the other varieties just because it was a little more early maturing. This isn't a massive head of cabbage here by any means, but we can still eat it. Little baby head of cabbage there, but it's pretty and tasty nonetheless. So that's what we got today. Nice little cabbage harvest, about 3 or 4 meals worth there. And once we bag that up, this stuff will keep in the fridge for a good 2 weeks. So we got plenty of time to eat it. Now I was going to try to get a few of these capture heads here, but the closer I looked at them, the more I thought, well, I'll just leave them, see if they grow a little more. That one there has definitely got a lot of room to grow. Some of these have some heads on them, but the outer leaves still look pretty good and are still fairly upright. So I think I'm gonna let those go a little longer, see if they get a little bigger. So now let's compare these 3 varieties to the best of our ability, kind of given what we've dealt with here with the Arctic blast. So we'll start out with Megaton, and it definitely makes the biggest heads out of the 3, makes a bigger head than Bravo or Capture. Now we didn't get any 10, 15, 20 pound heads, which we thought we were gonna get, probably would have, had not we had that super cold, you know, week there. But we got some pretty good heads nonetheless, bigger than the other 2 varieties we grew. So if there was an award for the biggest cabbage in our garden, Megaton would get that prize. Now let's talk about the Bravo here. So Bravo was by far the earliest maturing variety and the variety that dealt with the heat the best. So down here in the fall, we can still get temps in the mid 80s. Sometimes that stresses certain cabbage varieties. Didn't bother Bravo at all, pushed right through it and gave us some nice early production. So we got Megaton, which is the biggest, Bravo, which is the earliest and most heat tolerant, and then Capture, which is still out there, was by far the most frost or freeze tolerant. These 2 varieties right here got tore up pretty good by that Arctic blast, whereas Capture, most of those plants still look pretty good. Now, like I said, it's a lot slower. It seems to thrive once it gets really cold, so it's a little slower and just waits till it gets cold, and that's when it starts making some nice heads for you. So all 3 of these varieties fill a nice niche, and it just depends on what you're looking for as far as cabbage goes. Now I probably won't grow Capture again unless I've got some seeds left. I don't know if I do or not. If I have seeds left, I'll grow it again, but I probably won't grow Capture again, assuming we're only going to get an Arctic blast once every 20 years. Ideally Bravo would probably perform better for me all throughout the winter, you know, succession planting it every couple months or so. So I'll probably just stick with Bravo from now on when I buy more cabbage seeds. I really do want to grow a 15 to 20 pound cabbage though, so I'll probably try Megaton again at some point as well. So now let's have a little chat about something I was thinking about as I was ordering my warm season seeds online the other day. Now, we've had several people asking, are we going to do a video talking about all the warm season seeds we're planning on growing? And yes, I will do a video on that. Probably wait till I get most of those seeds in the mail, and then we'll do a whole video talking about all the different varieties we have purchased or that we're planning on growing. Now, in addition to that, in the past, we've also gotten a lot of people asking, how do you decide on the varieties you're going to grow? So we have some tried and true favorites that we know we like, but we also try a lot of new varieties each year. How do we decide on those new varieties? And so as I was going through buying my warm season seeds, you know, vegetable by vegetable, I got to thinking, you know, what considerations am I using here as far as choosing heirlooms or choosing hybrid varieties? So what I want to do here is kind of go through some of these warm season vegetables that we'll be growing and tell you whether I like to grow heirlooms for that vegetable, hybrids for that vegetable, or both, and tell you why. Now before we get into this, as we're comparing heirlooms versus hybrids with all these vegetables, we're just going to be focusing on taste and production here. We're not considering the fact that with heirloom or open pollinated varieties you can save your own seed. Yes, that is a huge benefit of growing heirloom or open pollinated varieties, but here we're just talking about taste and production. People like to save seeds for a lot of different reasons. Some people like to do it because they're worried about something happening, you know, they're prepping for something. Some people do it for budget reasons. Some people just enjoy seed saving. But we're going to kind of push that to the side and just look at heirloom versus hybrid, taste, production considerations when we're comparing the two. So let's start off with tomatoes, which is most people's favorite thing to grow in the warm season garden. Now we know heirloom tomato varieties have exceptional flavor. You know, they're beautiful. They usually have some really pretty colors on them. You know, have some funky shapes to them and have that, you know, really acidic flavor that a lot of us are looking for. No doubt that heirloom tomatoes taste amazing. Now, the downside of that is they can oftentimes be harder to grow, especially if you live in a warmer climate like we do. They don't fight the pests and diseases as well as some of the hybrids do. But for a lot of folks, including myself, because I grow some every year, the taste and flavor of them outweighs some of the difficulties of growing them. Now the hybrid tomato varieties are going to be more productive, and they're probably going to be easier to grow because they're more disease resistant or disease tolerant. Now as far as the flavor gap goes, it used to be pretty wide, but the newer hybrid varieties are kind of closing the gap a little bit there. Now I think store-bought produce tends to give hybrids kind of a bad rap, so to speak, just because they're so tasteless. But some of the more modern hybrids that have been introduced in the last few years that have really been bred for flavor, you know, Red Snapper, one of our favorites, comes to mind, is not that far off from some of these heirloom tomatoes. So where it once was a large, wide gap there, you know, there's not much difference with some of these newer hybrids. So given all those considerations, when it comes to tomatoes, I like to grow both heirlooms and hybrids. I like the look, I like the taste of some of these heirloom varieties. I know they're not going to be super productive for me down here, and I know the diseases are probably going to eventually get them, but they're just fun to grow, so we always grow a few. We count on the hybrids as far as our production for canning, you know, making sure we have tomatoes. We're not counting on the heirlooms, we're counting on the hybrids. And like I said, the flavor of the hybrids, especially these more recently introduced ones, is pretty dang good. So now let's talk about peppers and kind of the heirloom versus hybrid argument there. Now for the most part, we're growing hybrid peppers down here. I will grow an heirloom from time to time if it's a rare variety, but for the most part, we're growing hybrid peppers. I don't really see the value in growing an heirloom or open pollinated bell pepper variety. An heirloom bell pepper is going to taste the same as a hybrid bell pepper. There's no taste difference there. The hybrid is going to give you disease resistance. The hybrid is going to give you better production. So in something as basic as a bell pepper, I'm always going to pick the hybrid. For me, the seed saving part of the equation is not a big enough advantage for the heirloom. I'd rather have more production, more disease resistance. So for your standard pepper types, bell pepper, banana pepper, cayenne pepper, jalapeno pepper, I'm always going to pick a hybrid variety for those, but there are a few heirloom peppers that we like to grow. Next on the list would be sweet corn. Now we're not talking about field corn here, that's a whole other conversation. Just talking about sweet corn. Now call me crazy, but aside from the seed saving part of the equation, I don't really see why anybody would want to grow an heirloom sweet corn. I guess maybe you like your corn to taste a little more starchy than you do sweet. But we like growing the super sweet, the hybrid varieties, because we have such a long harvest and processing window there. We've got about 10 to 12 days we can work with. We don't have to pick it all in the morning because we're worried about getting starchy later that afternoon. We don't have to process it all in the same day. We can harvest some of our corn, keep it in the fridge for a few days, wait a few days, process it and freeze it, and it's still going to be high quality. Now, we do enjoy the sweetness of some of the modern day sweet corn varieties, but the main reason I prefer them over an heirloom is because of that harvest window there. Alright, next on the list would be pumpkins, and this one's kind of a toss-up. I have found some hybrid pumpkin varieties that do really well for me, like the polar bear does really well for me in the fall. But there are also some heirloom pumpkin varieties that kind of have some built-in, disease and insect resistance. Seminole pumpkin, Cherokee tan pumpkin. There's one that was developed at the UGA called the Georgia Bulldog pumpkin. We're actually planning on growing some Seminole pumpkins again this year. Been a while since I've grown that variety. So, I find certain situations where I like a hybrid pumpkin variety, but there's other situations, there's some of these heirlooms that perform really well down here for us. So, like I said, kind of a toss-up on the pumpkins. Now, next on our warm season vegetable list would be okra, and over the last few years I've started to actually prefer heirloom okra varieties over the hybrid varieties. Now, there's no doubt the hybrid okra varieties, jambalaya comes to mind, are much more productive than some of the heirloom varieties. But with that productivity, you also get a smaller harvest window. You got to pick those pods when they're just right. They get tough really easily, and some of those hybrid varieties tend to be really, really itchy. They're not that enjoyable to harvest. So as a result, lately I've been leaning toward more heirloom okra varieties. They give me a little longer harvest window. I don't have to pick it every day or every other day. I like the varieties where I can let the pods get a little longer and it's not going to get tough on me. And also, I enjoy the fact that I'm not just stinging and tingling after I go out there and pick it. Now let's talk about watermelons. And much like tomatoes, I think store-bought produce has given hybrid watermelons kind of a bad reputation. And just because somebody goes to the store and gets a bad watermelon at the store, it's not ripe or it's not sweet, they think all hybrid watermelons are terrible and they're not near as good as the old watermelons that were grown in the good old days. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of y'all out there that will disagree with me, and feel free to do so in the comments below. I enjoy having these types of discussions, but it is my opinion that hybrid watermelons blow these older varieties out of the water. We've done quite a few watermelon trials here over the last couple of years, seeded and seedless watermelons, and the hybrids always give us a better, sweeter tasting watermelon and a more consistent fruit size and more production. Now, like I said, you can't compare a store-bought hybrid watermelon. I'm talking about a hybrid watermelon that you grow in your backyard, that you pick at peak ripeness. You get one at peak ripeness, it's going to be way sweeter than some of these older varieties. Now, I know there's a fad going on right now, bringing back some of these older watermelon varieties. A lot of people are into that. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's just been my experience that those older varieties just can't compete with these hybrids on sweetness or consistency or production. Now, lastly, on our warm season vegetable list, we're going to group these two together because it's kind of the same principle in my opinion. And here we're talking about summer squash and cucumbers. And when we're talking about these, we're just talking about basic stuff here, yellow crookneck squash, yellow straight neck squash, pickling cucumber, slicing cucumber. Nothing fancy here, just the basic stuff that most people grow in their garden. So much like the bell pepper point I made earlier, I don't really see any value in growing an heirloom or open pollinated variety of crookneck yellow squash or straight neck yellow squash. A straight neck squash is a straight neck squash. A crookneck squash is a crookneck squash. They all pretty much taste the same. Now, some varieties are going to be more productive than others. Some varieties are going to be more disease resistant than others. And that's why I think, or at least for me, I'd rather grow a hybrid that's going to give me more production, more disease resistance. And if you were blindfolded, highly doubt you could tell the difference in taste between an heirloom yellow squash variety versus a hybrid yellow squash variety. So let's talk about a few examples with some stuff we like to grow here. So a few years ago, we did a little trial comparing the heirloom costata romanesca variety of zucchini squash, whatever you want to call it, to a hybrid variety called Pantheon. And it wasn't even close. The Pantheon variety blew the doors off the heirloom variety. They tasted the same. They looked the same. Just we got way more production out of the hybrid variety. And we kind of see the same thing with cucumbers. So we like to grow a variety of pickling cucumber called Supremo, which is really, really disease resistant. If you were to compare that to a variety like Boston Pickling, which is an open pollinated older variety, Supremo will blow the doors off Boston Pickling. Now the cucumbers are gonna kind of look the same. A pickling cucumber kind of looks like a pickling cucumber. They're going to taste the same, but you're going to get way more production and way more longevity out of Supremo than you would Boston Pickling. So as we've worked through those warm season examples there of tomatoes, peppers, sweet corn, pumpkins, okra, watermelon, squash, and cucumbers, you can see that there are some instances where I like growing heirlooms. There are other instances where I far prefer the hybrids. Now I know there are some people out there that only grow heirlooms, only grow varieties they can save seed from, and that's fine. But I think in most people's gardens there's a place for hybrids and heirlooms. There are some vegetables where the heirlooms are going to do really well and give you some really nice flavor, color, beauty, all that good stuff. And then there are other instances when you really want to just go for production or disease resistance with the hybrids. And sometimes from a budget perspective, the longevity and increased production of these hybrid varieties outweighs the higher cost of the seed. So let's use this example here. This person over here has some Boston Pickling cucumber seed that they've saved year after year. They're not going to have to buy any cucumber seed this year. This person over here spends $5 or $6 on a packet of Supremo pickling cucumber seed. Well, this person didn't have to spend that $5 to $6 on seed, but this person over here is going to grow 5 to 10 times more cucumbers. Well, that 5 to 10 times more cucumbers is going to easily outweigh that $5 or $6 that it costs to buy that seed. So you see what I'm talking about here. Yeah, you didn't have to buy seed, but yeah, you're getting a lot more cucumbers over here. Now everybody's situation is different, and I'm not trying to push you in one direction or another, just kind of showing you the pluses and minuses of doing either. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion today. I hope it was equally as stimulating for you as it was for me. I'd made these kind of decisions before, but never really thought about them in detail until I started kind of just making notes on paper and thinking about, well, why do I choose a hybrid here? Or why do I choose an heirloom in this case? And please share with me in the comments below for any of these vegetables we talked about, why you might choose an heirloom or why you might choose a hybrid variety. As always, you can find links to our affiliate partners in the description below. We've got some coupon codes for some of those companies, so you can take advantage of those discounts. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where we've got our fig trees listed. We've got our garden journal, recipes, hats, shirts, all kind of good stuff over there. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like, and share. And we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell, by the beauty of your life.